Welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. My name is Michael LeBlanc, and I am your host. This podcast is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Meet DUER founder and CEO Gary Lenett. This Vancouver-based brand features performance fabrics beyond denim and bottoms, tops, and outerwear for both men and women. It boasts a global wholesale network of over 1,000 doors, 6 retail locations in Canada, with one more on the way in Ottawa and the U.S., and a rapidly expanding North American e-commerce presence. Its vision is to be plastic-free by 2028 and is a success story 40 years in the making. Let's listen in now. Gary, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing really well, Michael. How are you?
I'm fantastic, thank you. I guess I'm in Toronto, so we're expecting some kind of heat dome. Where are you? Where am I reaching you today?
You know, I'm working from home today, and I live in Deep Cove, which is really a satellite community about 45 minutes outside Vancouver, which is mountain ocean. So I'm overlooking the ocean up on a cliff.
So listen, thanks for joining me on the pod. It's a real pleasure to get to know you and understand your business. And let's jump right in. You've got a very interesting background. I mean, everything from academia and law and merchandising and innovation and entrepreneurship. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your journey to starting DUER.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how long we have because I'm an old guy. It's been a long journey and not linear, for sure. I mean, I came out of university. I was I'm sort of a product of the late 1960s, early 70s, and in terms of my ideology, and really wanted to do something that was altruistic. And my first degree was in teaching. I thought that was one way that I could really contribute to the world. And then I decided quite quickly after teaching just for a short while that I wanted to get a law degree so that I could advocate for those who were less fortunate. And by the time I got out of law school, found that I sort of had this entrepreneurial gene, and the clients I was attracting were really pure entrepreneurs, and practiced law for 5 or 6 years with a big law firm in Vancouver, and then went out with my brother, who asked me to come and help him with a business, which at the time was a very small cottage manufacturing business, and I never looked back. And now 35 years later, I'm working on my 5th brand, and this will be my last one. I started it when I was 57 years old, and having more fun than I've actually had in my whole career. So feel very fortunate.
Fantastic. And you know, when you look back at all that kind of diversity, so to speak, in your background, does it add up to greater than the pieces of the whole as you get into these entrepreneurial journeys? Do you say, boy, I went down a few non-linear paths, but it all added up to way more than 1 + 1 = 2? Oh,
absolutely. I mean, people always ask me, like, does teaching? I taught at all levels, and I still teach. I teach periodically. I get an itch, and I'll teach at a university or college, either business or fashion. But people often ask me, like, does your law or teaching? I mean, everything in my life, I find really contributes to where I'm at right now. And I think that, whether, and I guess this is a bit cliche, but probably the failures more so than the successes have really informed what I do now. And I mean, it's certainly, you said it's not linear. I mean, I've definitely had all the ups and downs that most entrepreneurs have, who are taking risks. I always say if you don't fail, then you're probably not taking any risk, because I don't know anybody who doesn't fail at one time or another who is taking risk. And DUER was really born out of me failing in a previous venture and coming back and doing things completely differently.
Interesting. You know, I just had the opportunity to interview in Barcelona the chairman of IKEA, and one of the fun things he said on in our interview was they they had considered having a competition and an award ceremony for the worst idea and the biggest failure at IKEA to, as you say, kind of inculcate that culture of like, if you're not trying and failing, you're not really trying that hard, was their philosophy. So
I love that.
It takes IKEA. We're going to have an award ceremony for it. The biggest mistake. I'm not sure that's going to make on everybody's LinkedIn profile, but anyway, that's a whole other thing. Let's talk about DUER. So you referenced it a couple times. What is it? 35 years of designing, and you've been in the denim and the fashion business for a long time. So give us a little bit about that background, particularly, and how it ladders up to what you're doing today.
Yeah. Well, I started with my brother, and at the time we got a contract from Levi Strauss we had a very small, there was probably about 25 sewers, 30 sewers, 5 people in the office. It was a very small business. I had actually talked my brother into going into the business when I went to law school. So he called me 10 years later, because it was my father's business who had took ill, and I talked him into going. He called me 10 years later and said, okay, I want you to come help me for a year. And that became 2 years and then forever. But,
Interesting.
But at the time, so we were asked to do some work for Levi Strauss, and they put my brother and I in their factories and taught us how to make jean jackets. In those days, Levi's, this is in the early 1990s, and Levi's was really dominated the denim market at that time. Their market share was crazy. And their engineers in their factories didn't want them doing jean jackets because, they sell 12 times jeans to jean jackets, and the jean jackets were just disrupting their efficiency. So they actually taught us how to make jean jackets to get them out of their factories. And I guess the context is this was still a time when there was manufacturing in North America.
And that's a great context, because as we were talking about off mic, I spent some time at Levi's, and that was a time when I think their mandate was to make product in every market they sold product in. Is that familiar? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I mean, most of it was still coming out of North America to begin with. Like what they would do, like say Chile. I remember we ended up doing actually all of their international business, like their small market international business. So they wouldn't set up a factory in South America until they had a certain amount of scale. And so I remember we were shipping all over the world for them. And then once they'd get enough production volume, then they would open up a factory in the country.
So, with all your experience, what was the inspiration, the origin story behind DUER? And tell us a little bit about DUER. We've mentioned it a couple of times, but why don't we start at what is DUER? Let's start there, and then we're going to talk more about how it came to pass. But I know of it, and you're opening a new store in Ottawa, my hometown. So lots of interesting things going on. But first of all, tell us about DUER. What is it? And then give us a sense of the origin story behind it.
Okay, well, I'll go back and sort of bridge the Levi's experience to the origins of DUER. I mean, there's 30 years in between there, and I ended up working after Levi's. Once people see you as someone who can work with Levi's, and that was on the manufacturing and design, then I was very fortunate that I got to work with really almost every other large denim company in the world. I did Harley Davidson program for 25 years to Nordstrom's program for 20 years, Gap, Ralph Lauren, every mass merchants like Costco I even did a denim line for Lululemon. No one knows much about it because it didn't last very long. But, I really got to work with everyone. And I did that work mostly to be able to pay for my passion, which was brand building. So I was doing what we call private label for all these other companies. And then I was developing my own brands. And the brands were on the fast fashion side, mostly young, contemporary, young women's brands that were, it was based on trend. And by the time I was 57 years old, which is when I started DUER, I was just over that. I just couldn't. There was nothing attractive to me about, and I was ready to get out of the business. In fact, I had told my wife and my partner at the time, I said, I'm done. I can't do trend-driven business anymore. I have, it was really hard for me to fake my passion or, oh, I'm so excited, destructed jeans are coming back for the 5th time in my lifetime. And everything circles.
I mean, you exited at the right time, because now we see this China fashion, China factory direct model that has really upended things as well, right? Or as I call it, landfill direct models. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. And that's what it is. I mean, 67. I mean, one of the things that really informed DUER was 67 pounds per person. Used clothing goes into landfills in North America every year. 67 pounds per person, and
we haven't even talked about how much gets incinerated before it even gets there. Right?
Well, it gets incinerated or sent overseas and killing economies in Africa. So just ridiculous. And I really didn't have any interest in that. So I was going to I wasn't going to retire, but I was going to get out of the business, and told my key partners, family, and I started downside. I had closed up my manufacturing business about 10 years earlier. So I was traveling on a plane all the time, sourcing overseas, and really was, in my view, not very healthy. And I basically said to my wife and my partner, I said, I'm done. I said, I'm winding down this business. I can't do this anymore. I don't. I wouldn't have stopped working, but I wasn't going to do that anymore. I was going to figure out something else. And so I'm winding down the business. I gave up my car and started riding my bike everywhere. and I realized that as I was riding my bike, that if I had an important meeting, I couldn't find anything that I would wear, because I've got a bit of a style DNA. I got my own style. And I said, I couldn't find anything that I would wear that would allow me to bike for an hour. I had about an hour's commute from my home to my office, and sort of ergo bingo, like, oh, here's an opportunity. And so, and it wasn't fast fashion, because it was really more about, solving, it was much more about functional fashion, which was interesting to me. And I knew I had the fabric expertise to do that. So, and I guess the other contextual piece is that, I come from the home of Lululemon, of athleisure, that was born here. But I won't wear a polyester synthetic rich pant with a logo on it and try to dress it up. Like, I don't like synthetics, and I don't think they're good for the environment. So all of this contributed to the ideation before, of DUER. And, went to a longtime friend of mine in the business and said, look, if you set up a factory that dedicates itself to making functional fashion, where instead of doing athleisure, which is really après gym clothing, I want to flip that on its head and say, let's put performance that jeanswear and regular cotton-rich, natural fiber-rich clothing. And he agreed, and we started this business about 10 years ago. And as I say, at the time, I didn't really know where it was going to go, but we now sell in 52 different countries. We're omni-channel business. We sell, all over the world, both through our own direct-to-consumer channels and through wholesale. So, for instance, we sell from Nordstrom's and Holt Renfrew to MEC and REI. So both on the fashion and the technical side.
You mentioned polyester, your dislike of polyester and those kind of products. Talk about the natural materials that you prefer to work with.
Yeah, I mean, 85. We do use some synthetics in our garments. Our goal is to be plastic free within by 2028. We're still working on it. 85% of our product is natural materials, and essentially we're talking about, we call them pants from plants, but we're talking about cotton, of course. That. But also we use a lot of tencel, which is amazing regenerative fabric. it also goes under other names, but Tencel is the most environmentally friendly form of. It's made out of eucalyptus trees, basically, and those are the two primary elements in our products. And just, I've always had an anti-poly bias, even before I understood really what it was doing to the environment. I mean, when I grew up, again in the 60s and 70s, no one would wear a polyester pant. Like 2% of the world's apparel was made out of polyester. Now it's 60%.
Yeah. And what happened? What happened to you?
Well, I can give you the sort of the standard view is that people discovered that it was, it had this performance elements, but really what happened is people discovered that it was cheaper. Yeah. And the, in my view, there was a bit of I'm not going to call it a conspiracy because it's not like a bunch of people got in a room,
Sure.
decided collectively, but the cost really drove what I would call a false narrative that if you're at all exercising or moving or working out, that you should be wearing synthetic products. And it's not true. They don't breathe as well as cotton, and they breed bacteria. And, the big environmental issues are that they're strong, they're durable, and that's why we still use a little bit so that our products don't break down too fast. But the shadow side of being durable is that they never break down in landfills. Like they're there forever.
Yeah.
And the other big thing is that, that's just now I'm starting to hear more chatter. I feel like I've been sort of screaming into a void for years now, talking about this. No one's listening. But, in the post-industrial washing and drying of these fabrics, like they're destroying our oceans. Like one polyester t-shirt, I think, sheds 1 million microfibers, which are, they're invisible to the eye. And those are that's just in a regular wash and drying cycle in your home. And 60, I think, it counts for, I think, 35% of the plastics problem that we have in our oceans comes just from this home laundry of polyester products. I mean, it's really quite disgusting but just going back to even before I understood the environmental piece, just if you look and, basically this lobby that's pushing polyester apparel, and they did a great job because, again, 60% of the world's apparel now is made out of polyester, is that it doesn't really work for it does wick moisture. But if you think about it, it's sort of circular. It doesn't breathe. So you need the moisture wicking more because it doesn't breathe. Right? Cotton naturally, you don't need as much. So I'm not saying there's never a place for synthetic garments. If I was going into the outback for months and my survival depended on me staying dry, then I want a very highly technical product.
Sure.
But for most of us, if we're not doing super high intensity activity, like you're way better off in natural fibers. They're more breathable. They don't breed bacteria, and it's just better for our environment, and they're more stylish in my view. And that's
they fall better. Yeah, they fall better. They look better. Now,
that's a bit of a personal bias. I don't push that on everyone because that's just my sort of sense of style.
Now, when you and the team gather around and you're thinking about next season or the next release or whatever, what customer do you have in mind? Who's your buyer? And when you're not the wholesale side, but for people walking into one of your stores, who do you have in mind when you're thinking about your designs?
Well, we don't we call him the modern outsider, and he or she is probably living an urban lifestyle, active urban lifestyle, and cares both about being outside. And I'm saying outside on purpose. I'm not saying outdoors. I'm not talking about necessarily a lot of our consumers are outdoor enthusiasts, but there's a difference in like I live in Vancouver. I mean, you can live an incredible what I'll call urban outside lifestyle here without going into the outback, right? We can go golfing, we can ride our bikes, we can do all these things that are really outside activities rather than sort of that traditional outdoor hardcore. And that's really who we're targeting. Of course, that's who we're targeting. We get quite a diverse customer base.
Sure. That's who you're thinking about. Now, let's talk about your retail stores. How many do you have today? And I understand you're opening a new one in Ottawa, of all places. Tell me about what you have. Tell me about the fleet today and the expansion plans.
Yeah. I mean, this is really fun for me. I mean, in my career, I actually haven't done retail before, so I love. I've sold retailers my whole career, but I haven't actually had my own stores. So this is really fun for me. We have stores in, our flagship stores in Vancouver, and we have stores in Calgary and 2 in Toronto. And we're just opening in Ottawa in a couple of weeks. And then we have stores in LA and Denver. And we consider them really where we can really showcase our brand and get this immediate feedback loop from our consumers. I love going on the weekends. I go into the Vancouver store, because I'm so highly involved in design. I just love going in there, and these are my babies, and I get to get real time feedback on what consumers think about the product and how I can improve.
What did you like about Ottawa, the Ottawa market? So it's obviously it's not exactly like Vancouver, but the folks who live there do like getting outside, as you described. Talk about is that what attracted you to Ottawa, or was it another opportunity? And why go there?
Yeah, I think for me, Ottawa. Well, I'm sort of the old merchant on our team. We have a lot of very analytical people who are triangulating where our e-com customers are and where our wholesale accounts are. And so we try to go, obviously, where we already have some presence, brand awareness. But for me, Ottawa is perfect. I've been traveling to Ottawa in business for many, many years. And I've always been an urban cyclist, and Ottawa was actually way ahead of the curve in terms of having tremendous bike paths, where you don't have to be going through the city to get from A to B. And I think, for me, that just made it natural. In the area that we're going into, you just have to walk around, and there's lots of restaurants and bars and stuff like that. But you also just see this modern outsider. I can just, by walking down the street, I can see that, our guy is there.
Yeah, it's a interesting part of town. Now let's talk about the retail strategy. So you've got a big wholesale platform, and now you've got your own stores. How do you see them functionally different, or do you see them as complementary? Like I talked to a lot of retailers or even brands who open up their own stores, and the hope is it's 1 + 1 = 3. But how do you see the stores? Are they marketing? Are they learn? You get to learn. You're already talking about learning from the customer, but how do they not get in the way of your partners and complement them? How do you think about that?
Certainly for us, it's 1 + 1 = 3. I mean, we call it our secret sauce. And I'm not saying that we're the only ones, but we're one of the few companies that I feel truly does not discriminate and wants to meet their customer where the customer wants to meet them. So what I mean by that is, and I could use names, but I won't, but a lot of companies, will be primarily one channel, and then they append another channel onto it. So they're primarily wholesale, and then they'll, start e-commerce, or they're primarily retail and they'll start e-commerce. We started out with this as our strategy, was to meet the customer where they want to shop, and we do not care. Our experience has really, really proven this out, in that when we open up a retail store, and this wasn't necessarily intuitive to our business 20 years ago, but when we open up a retail store in a market, our e-commerce goes up disproportionately, and our wholesale accounts sales go up disproportionately.
And so do you, I talked to a lot of retailers who you've built business over the years, and they say, listen, it's tough to build a business on the platforms with any kind of economics, and they're turning to stores as stores as media or stores as a marketing vehicle. It sounds like that's what you're describing, that kind of, as you said, the benefit of being physically present, whether it's Square One, Toronto, or Vancouver, or now in Ottawa. Is that what you're experiencing, and you think there's opportunity for growth in that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people, again, much smarter than me in my company, because I'm an old merchant. I'm not as up to date, but they talk about attribution of a customer. And, I thought at the beginning that, you could really follow, okay, if you do this ad, you could attribute, where you got the customer from, but that's not really how it works in real life. And what I find is that the stores give you, so even if someone doesn't come into the store and purchase, if they've seen an ad online, or they've seen a magazine article about us in the Globe and Mail, or they've seen us in one of our wholesale customers, Harry Rosen or Holt Renfrew or something, it takes a number of impressions. And once they see we have a storefront, it gives us that credibility that they may go in and buy the product. Like, it just gives you this extra credibility. And we're very bullish. I mean, I'm not going to say we're going to build out thousands of stores, but we've got a pretty aggressive plan. We've got a model. It works. Our four-wall profitability is strong, and it gives the customer a chance to come and see our whole assortment of product in person. And of course, we sell pants too, which is not an easy thing to figure out whether you fit, what your fit is online. So we're hoping to, add 4 or 5 stores a year from now over the next 6 months.
And outside, you're already outside Canada, you're in the US, but do you see the North American market first? Do you see Europe? I just got back from Barcelona. Do you see, in the broad canvas of your opportunities, you're there in wholesale, do you see kind of international expansion as a focus, or do you see lots of bandwidth to expand right here in your backyard?
Well, we both. I mean, Ottawa is what we would call mid-market, and so we'll prove that out. If it proves out as we believe, then there's a lot of other targets in Canada, and
sure.
And then the U.S., we're in Denver and L.A., and we do have, we're aggressively looking for a space in Seattle right now, and we will open up more stores there. And then you spoke of Europe. We have a pathway, as I said, where in Europe right now we're just wholesale. We're going to be adding e-commerce in the fall, and then I think you'll see shortly thereafter because our brand awareness in Northern Europe is actually really strong. If you think about that modern outsider, think about Germany or Norway or, Switzerland, like it's actually really a logical market for us. So you'll probably see a store in Europe within a couple of years.
Well, I can see you back to North America. I was in Williamsburg not too long ago. I can see you right on that main drag in Williamsburg, just in Brooklyn.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of lifestyle, fitness, outdoor brand, living outside kind of brands right on the main street. You probably know the one I'm talking about. So
I do, and I would love to be there. We are moving sort of. We're doing it. United States is a bit like boiling the ocean. It's got
to take a market at a time. You got to take it.
Yeah, we're sort of moving west to east, but I can't wait to be in Williamsburg. It's one of my favorite places to shop.
Fantastic. So, well, listen, this has been a great discussion. It's really great to meet you and talk about your philosophy. And you've been talking about your expansion plans. I wanted to ask you, what excites you about your product line today? What's your favorite product? What should the listeners, when they think about your brand, is there a flagship type product that they should be thinking about? And I'm going to go to, you're right near me. I'm going to go to Square One and check you out. I need some new duds. So, I'm excited. You got me excited about your product. What are you excited about?
Michael, you're asking me to pick between my children. You're asking me to pick my favorite child.
Tough. Oh, is there a flag? I was on Mac's site, and you've got what look like a couple of flagship products. You got some bestsellers up here.
You know what? Interesting little bit of trivia is that our first two products. So I came out with and launched the brand on Kickstarter with crowdfunding. Not necessarily for the money, but more for the just to get some
experience.
Yeah, I get some experience and our first two products that we launched on Kickstarter are to this day our two best sellers, and they're core basics, And one of our so one of them is our we call it our L2X01 jean. It's just a slim jean, and the other one is our no sweat fabric in black. Those are our two first products, and they're still our two best sellers. And this is 20 seasons later. And one of our core values is that the world, and it goes back to why I got out of the fast fashion or sort of that fashion world is people just need fewer, better things. And we make a really good product. We're not a slave to fashion. And I think it's a real testament to us sticking to our values that our two initial products are still our two best-selling products. So
doesn't happen often. You nailed first time around. As you know, you've been on a lot of different journeys. That's fantastic. You're like that rock band that tours for 10 years that sometimes described as an overnight success. There's a lot that built up to your success.
It's funny you say that, because I was at an event the other day, and someone said to me, "Oh my God, what an overnight success!" And I said, "Yeah, overnight success, 40 years in the making." Yeah,
exactly. Well, listen, this conversation's been not 40 years in the making, but a couple of weeks in the making. So I want to thank you for taking time to join me on the Voice of Retail podcast. It's fantastic to meet you and learn about the product and the vision, and congratulations on your success. And I wish you much continued success.
Thanks, Mike. It was a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure and check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, Senior Retail Advisor, Keynote Speaker. If you want more content or chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.